why someone can be weakened in their body or in some way sick is their spiritual, mental state. One example for this is in Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22. It says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." Now, the interesting part in this verse is the latter part of the sentence. A crushed spirit dries up the bones. What does that mean when a bone is dried up? So I did some research on this on the internet, and I found a German YouTube channel with a video talking about the bones and bone marrow. And if you want to research it, you're probably going to have to look for English sources. But what I read in this German source, it says that inside the bones, the bone marrow is produced. In the red bone marrow are the defense cells for the immune system. So if your bones are dry, then there's no fluid. The cells can't be produced or can't work well that are defense cells for the immune system. So a dry bone or dry bones can be the reason for a weak immune system or for a weak body. So a cheerful heart is good medicine or good for the body. A crushed spirit or a distraught spirit dries up the bones or weakens a man's strength or immune system. Okay, that was it for that example. All other verses I found to this topic of spiritual mental state of a person, for it being a reason for weakness or illness, I will put in the text box under this video, and you can go and read through that for yourself if you are interested. Sin. An example for sin, for those of you who have either never heard that word or you don't really know what to think of it. I used to not be able to really comprehend what the word sin means. So an example for sin could be envy, hypocrisy, murder, or quarrelsomeness, where you like to argue with other people. So those are just examples what sin can be. And in the Old Testament, sickness is often portrayed as a result of or a punishment for being disobedient to God's will. An example for this is in 2 Chronicles chapter 21, verses 12 to 20. In this story, a man called Jehoram is involved in idol worship and is guilty of murder. As a consequence of these sins, he has to suffer an incurable illness, which finally leads to his death 2 years later. So here we see sin being connected to sicknesses, or sicknesses being connected to sin. Of course, there are many more examples. The other verses and stories that I found in the Bible, I will post below under the video. So you can, if you want, go ahead and read those other examples for yourself. All right, point 2. Demonic possession or demonic bondage is also often referred to as a reason for a sickness. I want to show you 2 stories in the Bible because I do think there is a difference between demonic possession and demonic bondage. This is my opinion, the way I see it, and I want to explain to you why. The first story is in Luke 9, verses 39 to 42. In this story, there is a demon-possessed boy, and the demon in him screams out of the boy. He throws the boy into convulsions. I guess you could imagine it to be something like an epileptic seizure sort of thing. the boy foams at the mouth, and the boy beats himself. And in this story, the demon has to be cast out. And as Jesus commands the spirit to leave, the spirit in the boy screams, throws the boy back and forth, and leaves him. So this is like a dramatic kind of exorcism-like scene that's happening here. So when Jesus says, leave this boy, the demon manifests in the boy again and throws him around, and then he leaves him. And then he's gone. After that, the boy is free and healed. So this is an example where a spirit really has a human being in its possession, where the spirit is actually speaking, either speaking through that person's mouth that is possessed, or it's actually using their body to do things that the person itself doesn't want to do. The boy had no control over this. Then another story is in Luke 13, verses 11 to 16. Here it is talked about a woman who is crippled for 18 years because of an evil spirit. Jesus is saying this. And because of this, she cannot stand upright. After Jesus touches, heals her, and frees her, she is immediately able to stand upright. So in this story, we do not read anything about this woman having a dramatic exorcism done. I just use the word exorcism because I'm trying to explain the dramatic scene, what happens when someone is actually possessed, or in the Bible it talks about possessed people. So in this case, Jesus just says, he touches her, he heals her, and he frees her. And there's nothing dramatic that is talked about here that happened. And in verse 16, it says that Satan held her bound for 18 years. So here the word bondage, being bound, is used. And to be bound is like being in chains. Chains constrict or burden from the outside. It's not so much something that is in a person, but it's from outside. It's having them bound, putting them under pressure, suppressing them. So that is why in this case, I wouldn't want to call it possession. I think you could, but I think this is a good example for something where you can say this woman was held in bondage, like Jesus says she was bound. So I would make a difference between demonic possession and demonic bondage. We have come to the last point, the last video of the series. The last point that I want to talk about that is not so much, it doesn't say so much that it is a reason for the illness, but it is a possible cure. So in the last 3 videos, I have talked about how mainly the spiritual side or the mental side is a reason for illnesses or sicknesses. This video is about a physical remedy that can be used for a sickness or illness. So in 1 Timothy 5, verse 23, Paul says to Timothy, "Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses." So Paul here is not referring to sin as the problem. He is not referring to demonic oppression, bondage, possession as the problem. But he is simply saying that Timothy should use wine in this case. I don't want to say that wine is the only medicine, but he's referring to a natural, a physical substance as a remedy for Timothy's problem. So I just think this is really interesting that there's a section in the Bible where it talks about that also physical things, physical remedies can help us with our illnesses. So it's always important to defer and discern and see what is needed in that specific case of an illness. Does that person need freedom of demonic oppression? Do they just need the laying on of hands or prayer to get healed? Is it their mental state, or is it just simply something they can change in their eating habits or some sort of medicine they can use? So these are all different ways for sicknesses to be healed or addressed. And that was it for this series. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned something new. And if there's anything you have questions about, anything you're specifically interested in, you can post that under the video, and I will try to comment or answer to that, or maybe even make another video. Yes, okay. I'm glad you watched these videos, and I will see you, or you will see me in the next video. I will talk to you in the next video. All right, bye.